hearings. I'm just going to highlight the subtitles here, just as a reminder for what we covered last week. I did make it halfway through. Again, I meant to make it all the way through. In defense, these are long chapters. 62 verses for chapter 9. Come on, Luke. Luke is a gabber. He likes to write a lot. Yeah, exactly. So I guess we'll blame it on the editors. But Luke he wrote a long book. He's very wordy. But I love Luke's style. I love that Luke is really excellent at drawing out. He kind of massages points out of the scriptures that other writers don't. And he really gives attention to detail. So it's pretty cool, some of the stuff that he does, especially in the original language. Luke does a lot of stuff that in English, we lose that whenever we translate it. And there's a lot of color. And it's one thing, well, I guess I'll go on my little tangent here. Here you go. Sit tight, everybody. It's one of the things that when you translate something from one language to another, you always lose. You don't gain perspective, you lose perspective. And there's a lot of color and depth and taste and everything else that's built into an original language that when you translate, you can't capture that, because if you did, you'd have a book 3 times the size of this. You can't get a one-word translation and really get the feel for the original word. And that's just culturally and textually. We have a lot of stuff in our language that when you say a word, it ignites something emotionally inside of you. Like if I look at Terry, I'm going to pick on you. I just thought of a negative word, so I'm sorry. It just came to mind. It's DP's word, to give him credit. If I say Terry's a loser, the big L, it ignites something inside of us. If I use another word, I could use more colorful words. I could say, well, Terry's a scumbag, right? That's a word that, how do you translate that into another language? There is no word for that in another language, but in English, we know that's like really derogatory. Like if somebody says somebody's a scumbag, it's very, very negative, very insulting. It's just an awful word. And so in languages, that happens too. In the original language, there are words that we lose that sense of power and oomph. And like one of my favorite words, it's actually a cuss word that Paul uses, skubalon, whenever he says, I consider it's in Philippians, when I consider all things rubbish compared to the surpassing greatness of Christ. The word for rubbish it was literally a slang word for the SH word. It's a stronger word than crap. We don't get that in the English. We read rubbish. I consider all things rubbish, and we just kind of gloss over that. So it's Luke is constantly using words that aren't used elsewhere in the scriptures. Paul does that. Paul's a master of doing that. Like Paul uses words that aren't used anywhere else in the scriptures, and they're intentionally using language to make strong points. So anyway, that's my little thing on language. So I love Luke. I absolutely love Luke, and he does some mind-blowing stuff in his gospel. So what we covered last week, Jesus sent out the 12 apostles. In Matthew's account, it's a little bit more detailed. Luke definitely highlights the part where he sends them out with nothing, and so we talked about that. No money, no staff, no bag. They're not packing a suitcase. No bread. They're literally walking out in faith. And I think that's really important because Jesus essentially is saying you need to put all of your faith in God. All right, and then Herod is really perplexed about Jesus. Remember, Herod the Tetrarch had killed John the Baptist. He had him beheaded, and now all of a sudden somebody else is out there and he hears all this stuff about this Jesus, and he's like, well, was John raised from the dead? Is this Elijah? Did Elijah come back from the dead? So Herod, he's like, John I beheaded, but who is this about whom I hear all these things? And so he sought to seek him. I think he sought to seek him to harm him. I don't think he was like, oh, I want to learn from this guy. So Jesus has that. Then he feeds the 5,000. And interestingly, Luke deletes the walking on water story, the storm that cropped up on the sea. Remember, Jesus, after feeding the 5,000, Jesus goes up on a mountain to pray, and he sends the disciples on the boat, and they're crossing the Sea of Galilee in the middle of the night, and this big storm rises, and they're rowing for hours, and they're exhausted. And then in Matthew's gospel, it says that Jesus, or maybe Mark's the one who says it, but he says Jesus is about to pass them by. So his intentions were to keep walking. I always find that fascinating. He probably yelled out, Terry, losers, as he's walking. They're like struggling and fighting for their lives. It's a pretty cool story, but Luke never mentions it. I think that's pretty fascinating. So then Peter confesses Jesus is the Christ. All right, it's this whole, who do the crowd say I am? Some are saying John the Baptist, others Elijah. Some of the other prophets have come back. And he says, but who do you say that I am? Peter hits a home run here. He says, you are the Christ of God. You're the Messiah. You're the one that we've been waiting for. And then he strictly charges them not to tell it to anybody. And he talks about, now everything from this point on starts pointing towards Jerusalem. Jesus' final trip to Jerusalem, where he's ultimately going to be crucified and then raised from the dead. So Jesus says right here, right after Peter confesses him as the Christ, he says, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised. How do you think this sat with them, knowing that Peter just identified him as the Messiah? Like there is no question in their mind at this point. How do you think they felt when he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to be killed. I'm going to be rejected by all the elders and the chief priests, the scribes. I'm going to be killed, and on the third day I'm going to be raised again.
They probably all thought the same thing Peter said. They just didn't say it.
Here, let me bring you a mic. You know the routine, Brent. I know, that's right. You can hand that to Brent.
Was willing to say, which was, this will never happen to you.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think all of them, like they couldn't wrap their mind around it. And we'll find that out. Actually, later on in chapter 9, we'll find that out. Like they're kind of rejecting this idea or not fully understanding. And Charles made a comment last week after class. And he said this before. He was like, I think that Peter gets a bad rap because we were talking about Peter denying Jesus 3 times. And he said, I think that Peter gets a little bit of a bad rap because none of them really had the full knowledge. Like it kind of was hidden from them. And so they didn't have this full knowledge. And so when Peter's denying Jesus, it's not like he's like, heck with that guy.
I think Peter gets a bad rap because he had already, he said he was willing to give his life for him. And he had already proven that. Like he was ready to get the sword out and start fighting for him. Like
absolutely.
And then at this point, he's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because
we thought he was the Messiah.
Yeah. I mean, not that it was good that he denied him, but certainly it was, I think he was just kind of caught not knowing what to do at that point.
And that's why I think, I agree with both you and Charles, and I think that's why Jesus didn't reprimand him. Because other places, he's like, you have little faith. We see these moments where he's kind of blasting the disciples, and he's like, where's your faith? In that case, he turns, he looks at Peter, and I think it was with compassion, grace, mercy, and all those things. Peter breaks down, he starts weeping. And I think it's just, Jesus clearly wasn't angry with Peter at all. So I don't want to paint that picture that Peter was, he's this guy with little faith and he's weak and all that stuff. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just they didn't have a full understanding that this all was fulfilling the prophets. and the law, all of it had to happen.
It's interesting because I know and I forget who it was that wrote it, but there's a couple of devotional books on Luke, and the title of it is from hilltops to valleys, because Luke does this up and down all throughout. Like I think the title of the book is coming from this chapter where it's like he's up on the mountain transfigured, and then back down,
Boom.
and what's happening down below, O ye of little faith, and then
Yep.
Peter, you're the Christ. Well, although in Luke it doesn't do it, but you're the Christ, and then just a little bit later, he's saying, "Get behind me, Satan."
Yeah. It's like
it's like this roller coaster. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, we talked about that last night. It's the corkscrews on the roller coasters, right? Like Luke is intentionally doing that, though. It's not that he's historically and chronologically piecing this stuff together, and he's like, okay, here's the timeline, and here's how. Luke is intentionally building these dramatic mountaintop peak moments where all is good and right in the world. And we've had these moments, right? All of us have. We've been on cloud nine. We have the expression, right? There's another thing that you can't translate into another language because it wouldn't make sense. But I'm living on cloud 9. What does that mean? What's it mean to be on cloud 9? Everything is right in the world. Nothing can knock me off of this cloud. I'm on cloud 9. And then inevitably, what happens? Yeah, within minutes, you can be knocked off of cloud 9, and you can be in the darkest valley, and you're like, wait, this puffy cloud that was up at 30,000 feet is now sagging down into the valley. And what do we call it when a cloud goes from up here to down here? What's it called? It changes language. It's not a cloud anymore. It's fog. Yeah. And so Luke is intentionally doing these moments. Here's another one. Take up your cross and follow Jesus. Right? It's this high moment. Then he foretells his death, and then he's like, all right, if anybody wants to come after me, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross daily and follow me. Be willing to die. You try to save your life, you're going to lose it. You lose your life for me, you're going to save it. All right? Anybody who's ashamed of me, I'll be ashamed of him. Then the transfiguration. Now, this is the climax of the entire Gospel of Luke. At the transfiguration, Jesus is talking to Moses and Elijah, and that represents the law and the prophets over and over. Luke, who is a Gentile, is kind of tying this all together too for other Gentiles, saying like this is the fulfillment of the Old Testament, of all of it. And then this voice comes out of the cloud saying, "This is my son." Again, they're in the cloud. They're literally up on top of a mountain. They went from the valley. I'm going to die. You want to follow me? You got to take up your cross daily. You got to be willing to die, and you got to follow me. They're back up on the mountain. There's this transfiguration. The glory of God shows up. It's this blinding light, this mountaintop experience. And then they come down. Listen, on the next day, they come down from that. Now, everything from this point on, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem to be crucified. Everything in the Gospel of Luke, you have to understand this. Everything from this point on points that compass to Jerusalem for the final trip. On the next day, when they had come down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. And behold, a man from the crowd cried out, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, for he is my only child." Why do you think that's relevant? What are we pointing towards? Theologically, what are we pointing towards? The crucifixion of God's only son being sacrificed. And so all these stories they're intentionally meant to hit you with this idea that somebody's only son is taken from them. Whether it's by demons, by death, by disease, these stories are intentionally built into Luke. Now, that doesn't mean that Luke is making them up. These stories actually happened, but he's just arranging them in a very brilliant way to keep pointing us towards this idea that God's only son is about to be crucified. Behold, a man from the crowd cried out, Teacher, I beg you, look at my son, for he is my only child. And behold, a spirit seizes him, and he suddenly cries out. It convulses him so that he foams at the mouth and shatters him. Pretty strong language. This is a violent demonic possession. When I hear it shatters him, I don't hear this as only a metaphor. Like, I hear that it throws him down and violently is breaking bones of this little child. It's very, very gruesome. And we know from previously in Luke, demons have superhuman strength. Right? The demoniac legion who's breaking chains, they couldn't bind him. He's loud, he's obnoxious, he's screaming out, he's yelling things. People were terrified of this guy. And so Luke's painting another one of these pictures, only now it's with a child, and it's an only child. And he says, it will hardly leave him. What do you think he means by that? It will hardly leave him. It sounds to me like the guy's being toyed with a little bit. That like there's a time where he thinks the demon's gone, and then it comes back with a vengeance. And it's that kind of cruel, it's the cruelty, and I think a modern metaphor that's probably less visibly graphic of demons, but cancer, right? How many times do we know people who they've had cancer, they go into remission for years. Life is good, right? Mountaintop experience. Everything's going great. Then out of nowhere, cancer returns. I mean, not just a little bit. And it's always that way. It seems like it's always that way. When the cancer returns, it's not like the first time. It's like this time it's coming back for the person. It is coming back to take their life literally. We see it time and time and time again. So that's kind of how I read this. It hardly leaves him. It'll leave, but it doesn't. When it comes back, it's worse than before. And I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Uh-oh. Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation. How long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. Clearly, he's talking about his disciples. You faithless generation, you twisted generation. Get behind me, Satan. Right? Jesus is like, he gets amped up at their lack of faith. And why is that important for us today? Right? Like, how does this apply to us today? Why is this important for us? Do we ever lack faith? We lack faith when we pray. I'll be the first to I'll raise both hands. There are many times where I pray so sheepishly and I'm like, God, I know that you're capable. Like in my mind, I'm rationalizing. Like I'm bargaining with God. I'm like, I know you're capable. But maybe this isn't your will. Or we'll say, like we throw the cliches in God's time. Jesus didn't say that. Jesus said, whatever you pray for, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. He doesn't say pray and then just wait and kind of hang around. And then in God's time, if God's willing, God will answer your prayer. Jesus doesn't say that. He says pray and have the faith that that prayer has already been answered. So Jesus kind of blasts his disciples a little bit here. You faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here. While he was coming, the demon threw him to the ground and convulsed him. I kind of think, maybe I'm reading into this a little bit, but I think it was just the presence of Jesus is what rattled this demon. We saw it with... Yeah, they knew exactly, the demons know exactly who he is. We see that with Legion, because he calls him by name and is like, leave me alone. Please don't send us into the abyss. And so they're like pleading with Jesus. So this demon throws the kid to the ground right in front of Jesus, convulsed him, but Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit and healed the boy and gave him back to the father. And all were astonished at the majesty of God. Again, I don't want to read too much into this, but there is some foreshadowing that's going on here where there's this, the kid was kind of dead. The kid was overtaken by the demons, and then he was brought back. I mean, the kid was pretty much good as dead. Because that was, we find in other accounts, the boy was constantly thrown into water and fire. Well, why is the demon throwing a little kid into water and fire? To kill him. This is very violent, and we have this very clear picture that Jesus just instantly cast the demons out. The boy is restored to full health. He's brought back. Okay. While they were all marveling at everything he was doing, again, crazy peaks and valleys, just constant. It's this boy's violently being convulsed in front of them. Absolutely worst thing that you could possibly see. Very traumatizing to see this. Jesus casts the demon out. The boy is restored. He's in perfect health. Everybody's marveling at everything he was doing. While they were marveling at everything that he was doing, they're on cloud 9, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let these words sink into your ears." All right, we're all ears. Tell us how to cast out demons like that. That was really cool. Jesus is like, all right, listen up. Let these words sink into your ears. The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men. But they did not understand this saying, and it was concealed from them so that they might not perceive it. And they were afraid to ask him about the saying. This is where Charles says, let's give Peter a little bit of slack here, a little bit of breathing room, because this was concealed. They didn't really understand what Jesus was saying, and it was intentionally hidden from them by God. They heard it, and they didn't really understand it until it happened. Once it happened, and we find this out, especially in the book of Acts, like once they hear it, or once they experience it, then they're like, oh, that's what he meant. And then it's like they jump in both feet, right? Peter on the day of Pentecost. Peter jumps right up there and he preaches to a crowd of thousands. He's like, this Jesus who you crucified. Like, pretty bold, isn't it? Pretty clear. Peter understood. Once it happened, all these things started making sense to them. All right, very interesting. Right after that, all right, you guys are like, I'm going to die. Everybody's going to be against me. I'm going to be killed. It's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. Listen to the very next thing that Luke records. An argument arose among them as to which of them was the greatest.
Jimmy, I think that this discussion right here, in my mind at least, is the exact reason that Jesus just said what he said. Because they're seeing all this great stuff and they're like, hey, look at what we're a part of. Look at, hey, can we be on your right and left side? And all this, they're thinking all this stuff. And he keeps on saying, that's not what this is about.
Yep.
That's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, but right here, this discussion, they're like, which of us is going to be the greatest?
Yep.
Like, so that's what's happening behind the scenes with the apostles. They're like thinking, well, we're part of this new thing and we're going to be like rulers or whatever. And he keeps on saying, no, that's not what's going to happen.
It's pretty euphoric. Like, and that's where, again, going back to what Charles says, like, give them a little bit of room here because it sounds really cool. Like, to be a part of this, it's a blessing. It's a gift. They're like, we were literally minding our own business, catching fish, And now we're casting out demons. And this little kid, did you guys just see what happened? They're like, this is incredible. They're all marveling. We know that. Luke tells us. They're all marveling at this. And yeah, I think you're right. It just didn't click with them that it's about to get really ugly. Like they're literally on their way to Jerusalem, where one of the worst things ever known on the face of the planet Earth is about to happen. And I don't think this is not registering with them. So yeah, you're right. They're like, man, this is cool. Like, which one of us is going to get to sit on Jesus' right and which is going to be on the left? And we talk about this sometimes. Like, we paint it a little bit differently, but we're like, yeah, what's heaven going to be like? We ask it usually in questions like this, like, are we going to recognize each other? Let's be honest. We've all had these conversations, or at least these thoughts. Are we going to recognize our family members? Are we, like, how close to Jesus do you think we'll be? Do you think we'll be in the vicinity, or are we going to be right beside him? We've all asked these kinds of questions. And so I don't know that it's so much like a positioning of power, as much as like they're sitting around kind of wondering what heaven's going to be like. What's it going to be like? So really interesting, Jesus' response. Knowing the reasoning of their hearts, he took a child and put him by his side and said to them, whoever receives this child in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives him who sent me. For he who is least among you is the one who is great. So he's saying, like, if you're the least, and children, by the way, were not very well respected in society at this time. Children were they were the underlings, they were the dumb little, snot-nosed brats that just didn't know anything, and that's kind of how they were treated in the first century. And so Jesus is using that cultural view of children, and he's like, whoever receives this child in my name receive me. You want to be the greatest in the kingdom, be the least. Be the least here on earth. Take care of people, wash each other's feet, hang out with the poor, hang out with the homeless, be friends with them. Don't just treat them as your little project, actually invite them to your banquets. Right? Jesus uses a lot of these examples to show them what it's like to be the least among us. John answered, Master, this is so interesting. John answered what? Be like this little child. Right? Be like this little child. Be humble, be innocent, be the least among people. John's response to that. John answered, Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he doesn't follow us. But Jesus said, do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you. Right? We're trying to stop this guy because he's not part of our clique. He's not part of our group. He's not us. He's not following us. He's trying to cast out demons, and he's like the competition here. And remember, contextually, they couldn't cast out a demon. And now this guy, John, jealous much? Right? They couldn't cast the demon out of the little boy. Not one of the 12 apostles could cast the demon out of that little boy. And Jesus kind of reprimands them. You faithless and twisted generation, how long do I have to put up with you? Now, they see this guy casting demons out who they don't even know. Like, this guy is clearly not given authority by Jesus that they know of. And John's like, we tried to stop him. And Jesus says, don't stop him. The one who is not against you is for you. That's an important lesson for us today. We try to stop other Christians from doing things because, well, they're not the proper brand. They don't belong to the right denomination or whatever it is. And Jesus is like, no, anybody who's not against you is for you. So don't stop them. If they're blessing people, don't stop them from doing that. Even if there's a disagreement with theology and all this other stuff, don't stop them. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, All right, we're getting closer and closer to Jerusalem. Again, everything is pointing to Jerusalem. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers ahead of him who went and entered a village of the Samaritans to make preparations for him. Kind of interesting because the Samaritans hate the Jews and the Jews hate the Samaritans. But the people did not receive him because his face was set toward Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to tell fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" What are James and John's nicknames? Sons of Thunder. There's a reason why they have that nickname. It is absolutely astounding. It's so fascinating to me that Jesus, I've said this so many times over the years, Jesus literally could have picked anybody to be his 12 apostles. He had access to the entire world. He very specifically chose 12 people. He handpicked them and said, "These are my 12 disciples who are going to bring the gospel to the whole world. They're going to be with me. I'm going to mentor them. They're going to witness things. I'm going to give them all authority in heaven and on earth. They're going to cast demons out. They're going to raise people from the dead. They're going to heal people. They're going to preach my word. And they're going to continue this on and go out. And I'm going to give them a great commission to preach the word into all the world." And you look at the 12 and you're like, Jesus, really? You had zealots who were part of the group. You had Pharisees who were part of the group. Zealots are, what's it come from? The word zeal. What does zeal mean? If somebody is zealous, what does that mean? Just a little bit committed, right? A zealot is somebody who you're like, get away from me. Because they run everybody off. Because they're always right and everybody else is always wrong. That's a zealot. Jesus chooses zealots. He chooses fishermen who are uneducated people. He chooses like this whole variety of people who, I always say, if you ever want to lock 12 people in a room and guarantee that there's going to be a fight among them because of differing views, radically different views, pick these 12 men. You are guaranteed a fight. Like immediately. This is who Jesus chose. And I think that's a good lesson for us today, that not everybody has to look like us. Not everybody has to think like us. Not everybody has to believe like us. There's radical room for a lot of difference in personalities. There are some personalities that it's like it makes me take a step back and I get uncomfortable because that's just not me. That is not my personality. But other people are like, man, I really connect with that person. And I'm like, really? Yeah, like the whole soft, charming, like super nice guy. I didn't need that. I needed somebody who was going to beat me over the head with the Bible. Like Kelly Gross talks, I wish she was here. Kelly Gross talks about that. She's like, Jimmy, I love you, but you never would have reached me with the gospel. I needed somebody who was going to just smack me in the eyes with the gospel and just, it's black and white, and you need to straighten up and change your life. Yep. So it's we shouldn't all try to look like each other. There are really important lessons here. So anyway, John and James, the sons of thunder, they want to call fire down from heaven and smote these people. But he turned and rebuked them, not the Samaritans. He rebuked James and John. And they went on into another village. As they were going along the road, someone said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. In other words, I'm a nomad. My disciples had to leave everything to follow me. There is a great cost to follow Jesus Christ. Even the foxes have holes in the ground, and the birds of the air, they have nests to sleep in, but I have nowhere to lay my head. Are you really willing to follow me?
One thing here that I guess in that version it doesn't have it, but in this version, there's another part of verse 55 that I guess is maybe not in all the manuscripts or something.
55.
Yeah. You do
He
not
turned and rebuked them. That's
yeah,
all.
That's where it ended on that. Here it says, you do not know what kind of spirit you are of, for the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I wonder if that's like maybe a lot of times when they remove part of that, there is a footnote. I see the little footnote there, the F. Actually, let me look and see. 9:55. Go on with your thought there, Brent.
I was just saying that there must be a little, but that just once again just Jesus responding to John and James and John and saying that's not what we're here for.
Yeah. We're not here to smote people. As fun as that would be, we're not really here to call fire down on people. That's interesting. So my copy doesn't even have a footnote. It just omits it. There's no footnote or anything. So, yeah, really interesting. So then another, he said, follow me. But he said, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, leave the dead to bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Yet another said, I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home. Jesus said to him, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. This is so crystal clear to me, and I'll end on this note. This is the last verse. It's so crystal clear to me that Jesus is making the whole point that this is my mission. There is absolutely nothing that will stop this mission. And people coming up with excuses and saying, well, let me first do this. Let me take care of this business. And we do that. Like, that's such a human thing to do. Let me first get all this other stuff in line, and then I can really follow you, Jesus. How often does that work? Like, all of us know there is a continual queue of things lined up, of things in our life that's going wrong, things that need fixed, things that need our attention, people who need our attention. Every single day, there's not one day where my phone is not just full of text messages, phone calls, emails, always with things that people need from, like, they need time and attention. And it's not like people are just making things up. It's just life happens. And so Jesus' point is, yeah, you can take care of all those things, and 50 more things are going to be lined up that need your attention. Follow me now. And then you worry about these other things. But the first, follow me. And we hear that with people. We hear this a lot when people kind of get in the habit of not coming to the gathering, not coming to worship, and they're like, well, let me get things in order, and I'll start coming around. And in my mind, I just know I've been doing it long enough and talking to people long enough. It's not going to happen. Because there are always going to be other things in life that come up. That's just how it is. That's how life works.
And Charles chimed in, that I believe is also related to how much time Jesus has left for his mission.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. There's not a lot of time left on Jesus' mission. Clearly in Luke, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. Time is ticking. And so there's not time to take care of all these things. If you're going to follow me, get in line and follow me. Follow me now.
And that's the way it should always be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it should always be that way. But a lot of times, I think because of human nature, we want to plow and we want to look back and be like, look at what I accomplished.
I want to play a little devil's advocate.
Yeah, do it.
So if you are a Christian man and you heard that another man left his family to go follow, would people not be like, oh, they didn't take care of their family, and they didn't do, like they have so many other things to do.
100%. And I think that's part of the point. I think that's part of Jesus' point. You're going to get all, because he tells his disciples, you're going to be ridiculed. You're going to have people hate you. Blessed is the person who receives all kinds of persecution for my name. Yeah, people are going to look at you. And I mean, I'll give you an example of something I'm experiencing right now. So I just had, in the last couple weeks, there was a podcast that came out. I worked with the U.S. Marshals. It was this big case. That went public, and now people know that I was a source for the Marshals. Literally saved these 4 kids. There was a murder-suicide that was planned by the mother. Literally, we were up against the clock. I was able to lead the U.S. Marshals to this fugitive mom. We found her and the kids. Everybody got rescued, including the mother, who was not in a very good frame of mind. You ought to see some of the messages, both public and private, that I've gotten. People wishing death on me. People saying I'm not a safe person. Just endless barrage of really nasty messages. I don't care. That's one of the things where we have to make our decision, make a choice, and just do it. And yeah, 100%, there are going to be people who look at us and they're like, yeah, you're neglecting your family. And they don't know. They don't know what we're actually going through. They don't know how much attention we give to our kids. And it's just the assumption. So as soon as people start making assumptions, usually I'm like bad assumptions, I know I'm on the right track. Because I know how much time I give to my kids. And you as a parent, you know how much time and attention you give to your kids. Nobody else knows. And so when they start pretending and playing those games, I think we as Christians should wear that as a badge of honor and continue on that path. And even more so, zealously follow Jesus, just to annoy those people. So yeah, great question. All right, we are way over time. I'm going to stop there. Thank you guys, and we'll see you in a few minutes.